It's King-KAMBUF, 100 proof, bringing you nothing but the truth. Deep diving back into the land of architecture. We in lesson 5, design relationship to the human body. It's the introduction. Here we go. A design is composed of several basic elements which may be combined in a number of ways depending on how the parts are combined. One may produce an adequate design or a great work of art. Design is a reflection of the society that produces it, and even more, it is a reflection of the whole of human nature. Sustainable design is concerned with the holistic approach that understands the coexistence between the inhabitants and the nature of the environment in which the architecture is placed. As a practical art, design concerns itself with the things that are to be used by people. Therefore, there is a connection between the human body and designed objects. We often judge the success of a design how well it responds to or recalls the form of the human features. For example, just a graceful proportioned leg on a person are judged to be attractive. Similarly, proportioned legs on a chair or a table are similarly regarded. Anthropomorphic design relationships have existed since the beginning of design. They establish associations between human characteristics and man-made objects. Inanimate objects are frequently described as though they were alive. An example of this is found in the classical architecture where a supporting column was given a human form, such as a caryatid or a lantid. The same concept is expressed in the Greek columns of the slightly outward curve entices that gives an expression of vertical strength as a leg. Similarly, the estunes curves or the Doric capital approximates the shape of the uprising hand supporting the entablature above. In both cases, the subdialectics of the form reflects the eyes and the mind's dependence on the association with forms found in nature, particularly the human body. In the design of the objects, we often refer to the various elements with the same names that are applied to the parts of the human body, and the component parts of the chair are called the legs, the arms, the seat, and the back. In architecture, to refer to a supporting leg of a structure, the head of the door, of the face, the facade, and the building. A design may be viewed, therefore, from a perspective of human associations. Human awareness of the design is derivations is acquired during the earliest years of life through a variety of early physical experiences. One learns about the distance and heights of space, the force of gravity, and the various rhythmic patterns, the forces that act on all things, whether to put them down, overturn them, or blow them away, also operate on a human beings. Thus, everyone develops an intuitive awareness for judging the appropriateness of a design based on personal experiences, where the direct relationship is this between the human body and the units of the measurements used to describe objects. Originally, all measurements derived from parts of bodies. The smallest measurements was the breadth of the thumb, from which came an inch, and the human foot became a foot and 12 inches of length. From the center of the body to the arms extended was a yard, and the spread of the arms was a fathom. By the 18th century in Europe, most other systems of measurement have been replaced by the metric system, in which the meter was calculated as 1/10 million part. of the length of the meridian from the Earth's pole to the equator. The meter was approximately the yard, and the option of the meter established the measurement system for the globe as it was then known. The point of the systems of the measures and architectures are generally derived from and must be related to the familiar human dimensions as well as the dimensions of the world we inhabit. The nature as the source of inspiration. A story is told regarding a crystal palace which in 1851 was considered to be one of the greatest engineering achievements of its time. Its designer, Joseph Paxton, the English horticulturist and engineer, was contemplating a water lily when the idea occurred to him, adopting the structural system of the lily as the basis of his design for an enormous expedition hall. In the lily structure, he recognized the regular, precise, and delicate skeletal pattern. It consisted of veins enabling the stalks and the supports of a very large area. The leaf surface, while the truth of the story cannot be confirmed, the point of this is that we all carry in our memories and experience of nature. We continue to bear within ourselves a sense of structure in nature, since it's much of our experience derives from that. Children discover the qualities of the object by playing with pebbles, seashells, twigs, and a variety of objects. With this which they are surrounded, the range of lessons learned from these experiences depends on the particular movement of will of one's powers and observations, and a person who brought upon the fruit orchards will understand the deformation, the trees, the branches when loaded with ripe fruit. Children raised in the desert area on the hands, other hands learn the appreciation and the value of deep shade, overhanging, and natural ventilation of trees. Objects found in nature being the products of evolution, the natural response to a particular force are well suited to their purpose, otherwise they would not survive, because natural things are so appropriate to their purpose and so expressive of them. Designers have always found creative expressions in the realm of nature. Houses have been designed that inspire the forms of seashells. Airlines terminals have been designed that inspired by the symbols of flight, such as the wings of a bird. Commercial structures that have designed has tree-like forms in which the floors are cantilevered like branches. This one thing, however, to find inspiration in nature is quite another to know how to make use of it. What we appreciate in nature can be transformed literally into a man-made product. The rugged configuration of a piece of driftwood along the beach longs this, and the characteristics as it forms this into a table and a lamp, because the relationship between it is force that created it originally, or the no longer its reason for being. To learn from nature, therefore, one must understand the principles underlying the natural forms under evolution, transposing those processes into your own. We should not emanate forms, but rather emulate processes. The vocabulary of form, basic systems of geometry. Design concepts are described by a visual language that can be learned just as one learns the verbal language, that the vocabulary of the design, the concepts of the visual organization and understanding of this vocabulary enhances proficiency in design. The components, elements, and the design of the intrinsic abilities related to each another, and it should not be separated. However, they can be identified and discussed when they look at the object. We do not see individual lines or planes, rather we see the whole object. Individually, these elements constitute the factors contributing to the overall appearance of the design. Consider the geometry, which generates three-dimensional forms. A point indicates position. It has no dimensions nor carries its occupy any space. It can represent the beginning or end of a line It is the place where two lines intersect. A line is a path described where the point moves. It has a position, a direction, and a length but no thickness. A line is a bound by points and forms a border of a plane. A plane is a path described by the line's motion in the direction other than its own direction, and a plane has a position, direction's length and breadth, but no thickness. This is the bounds by lines and defines the external limits of a volume. A volume is a three-dimensional space described by the plane in motion in the direction where the parallel to itself, and it has a position in space and is bound by planes. Point, line, plane, volume, three-dimensional form. What's the fourth dimension? Maybe sound. When one draws on the paper, the drawing lines represent elements of the imagined concept. These imagined concepts have following attributes. Shapes is the line of the configurations of things. Anything can be seen as a shape. Size is the physical dimensions. Magnitude or extended of something. All shapes have size. Color is the appearance of something caused by the quality of light reflecting by it. Shapes are distinguished from their surroundings or parts due to it. Color, white, absence of color. Black is the absence of light. Texture is the surface characteristics of an object. With lines, planes, and volumes, which are structured of objects and shapes, size, color, and textures, which are these objects' characteristics. A designer has the basic tools of language necessary to represent most any design. In addition, a designer thinks about circulation, such as the movement of the buildings through designer space, which influences the designer's spatial design. The geometric shapes that are particularly useful include the square and the circle and the triangle. The corresponding three-dimensional shapes are the cube, the sphere, and the pyramid, cone, and the cylinder. Their usefulness for designers lies in the fact that they are usually the basic organizing forms for structures. By thinking in terms of these basic shapes, a simple and quick design shorthand is at the designer's disposal. Two-dimensional, three-dimensional special shapes, forms 2 and 3 dimensions. Characteristics of architectural designs. The characteristics of an architectural design can be isolated, described, and analyzed. Among the characteristics are space, form, scale, proportion, rhythm, balance, symmetry, light and color, and design. By emphasizing one characteristics more than another, the example formula, symmetry, intense use of color, the artful manipulation of space, or the persistent rhythm. The characteristics of architectural design includes the following. Space. Space is the interval between points and objects. Architectural space is in a three-dimensional volume enclosed by building elements, which is limited, where the movement and the activities of the people take place. Space is perceived by all our senses, which interpret what they experience. For example, our visual perception interprets light and shade into forms. The sound within the space is affected by the dimensions of the space, which helps to characterize the space. Every space has an effect on people depending on its size, height, scale, light, color, and detail. Some spaces may feel awkward, restrictive, or uncomfortable, while others seem pleasant, inviting. There are some general principles that establish desirable dimensions and proportions of space. Severely restricted spaces can be produced claustrophobia, the fear caused by the feeling of confinement. Even those persons may have sufficient space, light, and air to function. This person may feel threatened or uncomfortable. Good design and interior space must provide the proper balance of openness and shelter and containment. If one is to feel comfortable, one room is very low ceiling may feel overwhelmingly confining and oppressing. A similar unpleasant feeling can be created by a windowless room, or one that is rough textured walls that is a person compelled to rub against the wall and walking. A narrow room with a high ceiling can arouse the fear of being trapped or being under surveillance. A room with a twisted curved wall may tend to disorient its users in the same only place of mirrors do the same. The aim of all design should be to create a space in which one will feel secure, sheltered, oriented, and therefore at ease. Since space also exists to accommodate movement and shapes of spaces can intricate how one is expected to move. Movement is governed by the amount of spatial freedom or access provided. No long, narrow space suggests efficiency, actual movement. A perfectly square or round room is specifically oriented, implies repose, and one may pause to remain at rest. In the case of a stairway, movement is governed by the width of the tread of the riser, dimension, and the location of the landing. A stairway may abate graceful movement or prevent it, depending on the stair's design. When we speak of manipulating spaces, we are describing the relationship between spatial design and the feeling of people that space achieve through design. 2. Form. The perception of form is based on the memory association developed in childhood, which involves the tactical or well visual sense. For example, we are aware of how a jagged rock will feel even before touching it. Smooth, rounded forms tend to be inviting, encouraging touch. Sharp edge objects issue a visual warning that they should not be touched or touched with caution. An object that is soft and lightweight possesses little threat the designer wishes to create. An object that is comfortable to touch, such as a doorknob, which uses curved forms which encourages grasping to convey a sense of stability or rigidity. One might utilize straight lines and right angles. This implies that forces are controlling and clearly directed. They convey a sense of orderliness and repose. Forms can be implied movement, such as the church spire that thus towards heaven. Similarly, effects can be created by the use of spiral forms or objects that accentuate the long parallel lines, especially when they are vertical. The twisted columns of the parquet interior suggest perpetual motion. Scale. Scale is the design of related size of the structure of space with reference to the human body. For example, the stairs rise in 6 or 7 inches high because of the distance one riser 1 foot comfortable with climbing a stair. Similarly, a handrail is about waist high. The top of the door, above the head height, seat height, and the approximate length of the lower legs all are said to be in scale. When moving about from space, our eyes constantly scan the scenery and gauge the size of the objects through the perspective distance or by clues from the nearby objects such as cars or trees. When something doesn't not conform to its expected size, when it is found to be large or too small, it is said to be out of scale. When it is asked how big something is, we are requiring about its size relative to ourselves. When we exaggerate or distort, scale can be used as dramatic effects, such as a superhuman scale is used to create monumental effects. These types of contrived scales also depend on visual references to the human body, but it also that dramatize the relationship. Monumental scales utilizes this limits a scaled relationship. Extra human scales derives from it, allowing functions to determine size. A large factory, for example, derives its size from the production process. The length of the runway runway in the airport is determined by the laws of aerodynamics that govern flight. Objects those size derives from such extraordinary extra-human functions may nevertheless contain clues of scale or reference, and examples of a window in the factory are designed on a runway we see. Proportion. Proportion is the relationship between the constituent parts of a structure. It is expressed in orders of importance of the parts casting. Some of the primary roles, others into the secondary supporting roles. Proportion suggests that the role played by the components parts of the structure. For example, a very slender column suggests a light load, and a fat column suggests a heavy load. Sensitivity to proportions may suggest changing the number of columns so that they will be neither too slender and thus possibly too many in number, too squat and thus possibly too far apart. Since ancient times, designers have sought the key of beauty through systems of mathematical proportions, consistencies, and proportional relationship between the structure parts and the aesthetics intended easier and comprehends from the Pythagoras to the Leonardo to Le Corbusier. Proportioning systems have been devised, those purposes have been provided harmonious order. The most ancient systems in the Western architecture are the arch, in the so-called golden section, which is based on the proportions found in nature, as well as the human body. It is the basis of the modular system devised by Le Corbusier. The golden section of the Renaissance conceptions of the proportions is the whole divided so that smaller parts is to the larger and the larger is to the whole. The mathematical expression of the golden section is AB equals BC with reference to the sketch of the human body. We can see that the full height of the body is A to the distance from the feet to the navel is B, and B is to the distance from the navel to the top of the head, which is C. This so-called intuitive system is a proportion usually called the golden section. And then we got rhythm. Rhythm is another design device for establishing order. Rhythm is the regarded accordance of elements in time and or space. We are familiar with the basic rhythms of nature, such as heartbeat and heart, and the changing seasons. The essence of sonic rhythm is timing, such as the sound of a beating drum. The essence of the visual rhythm in space, which is conveyed by the recurring design elements. The rhythmic spaces of elements have an emotional impact. Historical examples of this can be seen in the Egyptians' Avenue of the Sphinx, or the nave of the early Christian church. In the later of the regular recurrence of the same element accentuates the formality of the design, or the rhythmic systems commonly found in architecture, including exposing structural elements in the placements of the windows, then the repetitives of the patterns and the textures and the thoughts of the fine scale rhythmics. Rhythms can be expressed as large as well as small scales, such as blocks and row houses or the entire section of a city. And then we have balance. Balance is equilibrium among the constituents parts of the structure. It is also the visual quality. There is two types of balance, static and dynamic. In static, balance in parts of equal in size and located equally about the reference axis. In dynamic balances, the parts of the unequal size and arranging about the reference axis so that to compensate for that their differences from the example. The larger window closes the center line can be balanced by the smaller one of the greater distance on the other side. If the furniture in the room is arranged in the corner, the room may seem to be unbalanced. Pictures hung on the wall in the downhill pattern will appear to be falling. These phenomena can be disconcerting since the expected stationary objects have been balanced compositions. Symmetry. Symmetry is the balanced arrangements of elements equal deployed on either side of the central axis. Symmetrical designs are found throughout nature, from the temple of the Amun to the Parthenon to the Petit Palace. The principles of the symmetry has been utilized. It has become associated with the formality and the authority, as well as the certain. Symmetry is also the relativity accompanied buildings. Modern times are less authoritarian toward buildings, programs, or complexes. The building sites have irregular shapes, hence symmetry may be practical for many structures. And then we have lighting. Okay, alright, it's a long chapter, KING-KAMBUF. I'm gonna stop right here, and then we're gonna come back and do this here some more. This is KING-KAMBUF, 100 proof, bringing you nothing but the truth. Oh man. Oh man. Thank God for the blessings.